Please rewind this cassette.
We get a lot of vampire movies, possession movies, and zombies are bigger than ever. But why aren't there more werewolf movies? I know, The Howling, Wolfman, Ginger Snaps, and so on. Still, it's like we have to wait 20 years for a new werewolf movie. I suppose my lust for all of this has something to do with my second favorite film of all time. A movie with comedy, drama, horror, romance, and a little bit of everything. That's right, I'm talking American Werewolf in London. From director John Landis, best known for his comedy hits like Blues Brothers and Animal House. At the age of 19, Landis wrote the script about two American college students backpacking through Europe. What starts out as a buddy movie quickly turns into a tragedy. David Naughton plays the lead, David. Well, that was creative. Naughton had some fame before this. He was the lead of a television show called Makin' It. The show didn't take off, but the theme song sung by Naughton himself turned into a major dance hit. Naughton blew up even more after he got the part in a famous Dr. Pepper commercial. Landis saw the commercial and wanted to work with Naughton. By the way, Makin' It is one of my favorite songs, and I like to tell myself that I'm solid gold. Naughton makes a likable lead, and it's sad his career didn't turn out better. I think he was in an episode of Seinfeld. Him and his friend Jack end up at a bar called the Slaughtered Lamb. The locals don't take to them too kindly, but they seem harmless enough. However, once Jack asks one question too many, they get asked to leave, but warned to stay on the roads. What's going on? They get attacked by a werewolf if that wasn't obvious already. This scene is fucking brutal, man. Because the friendship is established right away, the scene has more of an emotional impact than most horror movies at the time. One detail that I love is when David runs away, stops, and runs back to save Jack. This is a simple way to make us like David just that little bit more. He's scared like anyone would be, but his regret after leaving Jack behind displays his loyalty. I think in another film David would come off like more of a college douchebag, but Landis writes him to be more of a guy you want to hang out with. He's not overly confident and shows a lot of fear. He can be goofy, laid back, charismatic, and smart. David then gets attacked by the werewolf and passes out. From this point on, American Werewolf gets a little messy with its structure. We get some odd editing during the stretch of the movie where David's in the hospital. Sometimes we get random dream sequences, and these are some of the best moments of the movie. Rob Egger did a very good video breaking down some of the hidden meaning behind these scenes. It's not hard to pick up on all of it, but I still suggest watching it. I've often wondered if this movie is saying something about suffering being a necessary part of life. When David first transforms into a werewolf, the step-by-step execution scene gives us a deep sense of his pain. Usually, a movie would try to make this pain relatable to us. However, in the off-the-rails hands of Landis, we watch David suffering in an almost voyeuristic way. Later on, Landis said that he felt like he stayed on the transformation too long because he was so fascinated by Rick Baker's effects, but I don't agree with him. I think the scene should be that long. One of my favorite aspects of the movie is Jack coming back from the dead to warn David about the full moon. When Jack first shows up in the hospital, his face and neck are badly mutilated. Later on, he looks more like a zombie, and by the end of the movie, he's pretty much a skeleton. Griffin Dunne is terrific as Jack. This is my favorite performance of his with his work in Scorsese's After Hours. For a movie without a lot of story, Jack's presence helps support the emotional arc of the story. This friendship and romance with Alex makes David's situation all the more tragic. The real kicker is the scene where David calls his house to tell his family he loves them. His little sister answers the phone, and we don't hear any dialogue outside of David's. Filming took place in early 1981. Landis wanted to use the bad weather for increased atmosphere. Some of the locations are gorgeous. Everything has a nice sense of place and a more classic quality in the way it's filmed. Landis cuts the fat from the movie, and one of my only issues with the film is an overall lack of narrative structure. The first act feels a bit rushed, and the romance with Alex is underdeveloped. We don't get many scenes with the werewolf, and the ending feels like it comes out of nowhere. I still love every part of the movie, but I've always felt it was too short for its own good. Perhaps I am greedy asking to spend more time in this world, but the scope feels bigger than the 97-minute-long movie we have right now. All the songs in the film have the word moon in the title. The movie was shot in sequence, something that isn't common for most films. The transformation scene took 6 days to film, with the makeup alone taking several hours to apply onto Naughton's body. They only had enough time for one setup a day. Clearly a lot of hard work went into making this movie, and it shows in the amount of detail put into every scene. I find this to be one of the most relaxing and rewatchable movies of all time. I used to watch this on TV like every week, and it always put me in a good mood. Every time I get to the porno theater, I get sad because I know the movie is going to be over soon. I'm going to take a quick moment to talk about my 3 favorite scenes. One is David alone at the apartment, the montage where he's just walking around fucking off. He's not hungry. He walks outside, comes back in. He tries to watch television. He's just pacing. He tries to read a book. I don't know what it is about this scene that's so interesting. It might just be use of music and images. I mean, I like a good montage as much as anyone else. But there are hints of the werewolf in David in these moments. You actually see some development here. This is actually moving the story forward. It's a way to make time pass and get us to another werewolf sequence without really, I don't know, like bullshitting with a lot of dialogue and so on. The scene's got this immediacy to it that's very, very good. And it's just the way Naughton looks walking around that apartment before we get the big transformation scene. I think it's that slow build in that montage and how it kind of adds levity before we get to the intense moment. Then we're going to talk about the subway attack scene with the most British guy ever, where most of it's a point of view shot. Most of it you're seeing the werewolf come at him or him running away, and you don't actually see the wolf except for I think 1 or 2 shots. There's the famous one where he's walking up to the escalator. This is the best horror scene of the movie. It's the most effective. It's the creepiest. It shows a lot of restraint in Landis's direction. And then, of course, my favorite scene in the movie is when Jack brings David to the porno theater at the end, and then all of the victims, all of the people that he killed as the werewolf are there covered in blood, and they all have different personalities. There's these hobos, there's this young couple that's being very polite and nice to him. There's the guy he killed at the subway who has the best line in the movie.
You must die, David Kessler.
And then they all start discussing ways in which David should kill himself, because it turns out you can't move on after you've been killed by a werewolf until the bloodline of the werewolf is dead. Now the werewolf that killed Jack is dead, but because it turned David into a werewolf, Jack is still in this limbo. So all of these people are in a limbo, and they're like, dude, you should hang yourself, you should shoot yourself, you should drown yourself, you know. It's a very macabre moment, and it's a beautiful balance of the comedy and the horror, but it's just more psychological, this scene. I think one of the best aspects is the dead bodies, is this zombie ghost aspect that's in between the werewolf story. It's a really interesting way to get into the mythology of the werewolf in a more interesting way, that if you are a werewolf, you see the people that you kill. That supernatural element that's in there, played for comedy, all culminates in this theater scene. And the fact that they're watching a porno film, there's just kind of layers to this about what the film is saying and the ambition of the film in the horror genre. American Werewolf could only come from the mind of a young artist. The movie is subtly ambitious, and in its best moments, hits at something larger than the restrictions of the genre it's playing with. There's something fascinating and inspiring about the way this movie plays. Its genre bending has been influential to so many modern horror comedies. The juxtaposition of tones can come together in striking effect. The most visceral moments are overwhelming to the senses. I don't even really know how they pulled it off, even after watching it so many times. It's really special in that way. As much as I love Trading Places and Animal House, this is still the Landis movie I go back to the most. I feel a special attachment to its images and themes, like it was made by someone who likes all the same stuff I do. The movie captures a sense of alienation, being in a place that you aren't comfortable with. David realizes he can't go home, and so he has to cling on to the only person he has any connection with. In my opinion, this explains his sudden love of Alex, or it could just be that she's one of the hottest chicks ever. I guess that's a good answer too. And she's a nurse. The lack of full body shots of the werewolf just lets you fill in the blanks with your mind. It's sort of like Jaws in that way, but you get to see more of the werewolf in the third act. The movie isn't cluttered, and the clarity in the filmmaking really stands out when compared to most horror movies and the rest of Landis's filmography after this. I like the stuff with the doctor investigating what's going on. This stuff feels like it could be in a Hammer film. It's nice that he starts out skeptical but slowly starts to understand that there's something going on with David. In the end, everyone gets to see that werewolves exist, and it's a very impactful moment with all the build-up. I like that the last scene goes from chaotic to sad, and then somehow ends on a punchline. The sudden cut to credits takes David away from us in a way that feels somehow unfinished. But really, this is true for real life. It's not like you're satisfied when someone you love passes away. It is a bittersweet ending because now that David's dead, we know all the people he murdered can move on, but it is strange that we don't get more closure with David before his last transformation. When I first saw the movie, I had no idea this was going to be the ending, but it's still a good story. They did a follow-up film called An American Werewolf in Paris. It's basically a remake with worse acting and terrible CG effects. Max Landis was going to remake the film, but that fell apart after he got accused of sexual misconduct. Michael Jackson saw the movie and brought Landis on to direct Thriller, the most famous music video of all time. It features a similar visual style to that of the movie. Imagine if Thriller had been a full-length movie. Sure would have been better than that piece of shit Moonwalker. Film 4 called this the best movie ever written by a teenager, and I'm inclined to agree with that. The movie was first released on DVD in December of '97, there was a collector's edition in 2001, and an HD DVD in 2006, and the Blu-ray dropped in 2008. I highly recommend listening to the commentary track with Naughton and Dune. For anyone who wanted to see more of their friendship in the movie, it's a nice gift. They give great insights and share many great stories from filming. But I really think what this movie's getting at, at least my interpretation of it, is the pain worth it? Does David's disconnect from London represent the struggle of Jewish immigrants post-World War II, surviving great suffering and entering a world that doesn't seem to want them? I could be reading into this, but I feel like David's inner pain symbolizes a hatred towards what he is, as if Landis is using a werewolf to vent his own insecurities and frustrations. The extended nightmare with the Nazi monsters can be looked at as a way to represent David's isolation from his family, or that it's his werewolf side starting to take over, giving him violent dreams that revel in the slaughter of others. Stuff like this gives the film an overall higher level of complexity. Even the dead still suffer, and there's no escape from the worst parts of humanity. It's an economical movie, made with great focus and ingenuity. I love every character in it, even the ones that are only on screen for a few minutes. The makeup effects still look amazing, and I adore Robert Paintner's cinematography. Needless to say, it's one of the most fun movies ever made. Check it out.
Saw me standing alone without a dream in my heart, without a